Hey, thanks for reaching out again. I make like a zillion videos, so I'm not sure if I would advise looking through my videos. I'm glad that you reached out. So I have de-identified your question, and I wanted to show you a trick that I use, and I haven't experimented with this for your particular study. So let's experiment and see what goes on. So we're looking at social isolation, aka we could also call it like loneliness. There might be other synonyms for it. I think social isolation is like something that's the jargon has come around in this century. So maybe there's some older stuff that talks about it in a different way. I don't know. But population, young adults, that's a tough one too, because sometimes people say young adults, sometimes people give like an age range, and sometimes it gets kind of messy. So maybe that one is where we're running stuck because maybe not everyone's using that terminology. So let's fish around. But let me show you my one great trick. I feel like I'm what do they call that? Like advertising on the web. Oh, clickbait. I feel like I'm clickbait. Let's look at that one great trick, and then you click on it to find out that it's just an advertisement. So from the library, we have the databases, remember, but I have my curated list that I think it would be great to go from on my social work guide. So I'm clicking here, and then I go to PhD and Master's Help for my list of my favorite databases. So some of these actually might be pretty good. I know CQ Researcher talked about this, but if we go into the discipline-specific research, there's three big ones that I think we would look at. You probably looked at PsycInfo. That one's the most popular, and I recommend that a lot. But since it's social isolation, it's kind of talking about a larger problem that occurs in communities or even larger societies. So think like a city or a neighborhood or something like that. So let's try sociological abstracts. And the trick that I'm going to show you can work in both of them. If you go to advanced search, what we can do is look for specifically for that methodology in abstract. So what we can do, so we already have qualitative, but let me show you. I would say don't look for study, but maybe just look for cross-sectional, because they might call it cross-sectional design, cross-sectional methodology, so on and so forth. So we want to look in the abstract only for cross-sectional, and if it's more than one word, put it in quotes so those keywords stick together. Otherwise, it'll look for cross here and directional there. Yeah, see, look here, they have design, design, surveys, studies, studies, survey, anatomy, a completely different thing. And then the and, we can do social isolation, or are there synonyms or related terms? This is something you can experiment with. If it doesn't work out, you can just do social isolation, or loneliness. Did I spell that right? Looks like I did. Loneliness. And that could be anywhere. You can also look in the abstract if we're not getting everything right off the bat. Let's do it. You could also look in the title, but let's see what we get, because cross-sectional is not going to show up in the title. It's probably going to show up in the abstract. And then we probably want peer-reviewed. And there's a whole bunch of other things we can do here. But I think peer-reviewed is the magic moment. Okay, my fingers are crossed. Let's see what we get. Hey, 97. Oh, look at that. They used both of them. So did you see what I did? I didn't know which one it was going to be, so that or statement gives me look for cross-sectional in the abstract, but then look in the abstract also for one of these two terms. And both of them showed up. So here's guidance for research, meeting social needs. and it's all sorts of different contexts. So this one is like social distancing and COVID-19 was a big, big, big deal. I have some relatives who are in their late 70s, and that was the worst part of COVID. It was almost worse than COVID, is having to stay at home and just get bored. So that seems to be okay, but let's take a look. Where do we have cross-sectional in the abstract, and how does it talk about it? Na, na, na. Oh, cool, there's a scale to measure loneliness. I don't see it, but ostensibly it should be there. My eyes are terrible. But so that's the trick, is if it's important enough to show up in the abstract, it will be in there. So let's do another one. Controlled study design is one that I'm not as familiar with, but let's take a look. Let's put it in quotes. Controlled study design, then we keep this one. We're still looking in the abstracts. Nothing. Okay, let's see. It looks like design might be the keyword that it's tripping up on. So here they have controlled study a lot, or randomized controlled study, or placebo, but they don't have design. So maybe that's the trick. So when we're doing these things, sometimes we add too many keywords. So the database doesn't have any artificial intelligence, so it's only looking for that string of letters. And so if some of them are not showing up, what happens if we just go to controlled study? There's 4. That's not a ton, but it's some. All right, so let's go back. And let's try this in another database. There's 2 more that I would recommend. So PsycInfo is going to be great because that is going to be named and classified disorders. It's going to be named treatments, and it's going to be very deliberate in talking about that methodology, like the qualitative and things like that. But another one is, if you get into the medical profession, some of the early interventions are people in the nursing profession. And what they will have is the opportunity to be with a patient for a long enough time where they could do some of these quick diagnoses of like, what's going on with this person? Are they suffering from a particular disorder? And then they can be doing the same things that like psychologists or sociologists would. So let's look at Sinol. And they do a lot of research, which is really cool. And here we can do the same thing. We can search in abstract. Controlled study. Oh, look at that. There's even another one. Social isolation or loneliness or social exclusion or social deprivation. Goodness gracious. And I'm always nervous. Oh, I don't need that in quotes. Social exclusion. That might not be the same thing. And social deprivation, I don't know. That doesn't quite sound like the same thing. I would say go looking and see what you see. It sounds like somebody being picked on rather than somebody just doing their own thing. Yeah, look at that. Whoa, they're talking about Ebola. So we can go to academic journals here, and we can do that peer-reviewed thing again. So there's 12. So I would try mixing and matching in the advanced search in several of these databases and see if you can't find something that clearly fits what you were looking for. The qualitative article, let's take a look at that. Qualitative is pretty easy. It's like surveys or interviews. I grudgingly accept. So here's the metasynthesis of qualitative studies. Okay, so a metasynthesis, I mean, this might work because they're looking only at qualitative studies. But what they did, a metasynthesis is where you gather a whole bunch of scholarly articles and you look for themes among them. So that's like a meta-analysis, meta-synthesis. It's kind of like you're taking all the articles and you're stirring them together into a single pot. So that one, I would look for qualitative. And when you're looking, you could ask your instructor if that's okay. But what you could do is don't put in research or study or methods, just put in qualitative and looking in the abstract. Oh, I want to look in the abstract for this one too. And we should get 1,100. Well, there you go. There's one right there. It's even in the title. So you could narrow down on this one. You could narrow down by date. You could say, okay, I only want something from the last few years. Wow. Yeah, so you don't have to go with that meta-analysis. So in the last few years, there's been 600 of them. We only want academic journals. So hopefully that was it. Goodness gracious. So there should be a lot to find. So it might be, and I've seen this, people do this all the time, myself included, is they'll include design or study, and that will trip it up. So you can just truncate and go for the shortest version. And hopefully that's what was going on. But let me know if it wasn't, and I'm happy to help further. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon.